All of us there in the NEC have our smallanyana skeletons, and we don't want to take out all skeletons out, because they will be, or hell will break loose.
Alright, so welcome to the weekly breakdown, and the big question this week is, what's up with all the commissions? So I like to think at the moment we live in the Republic of Commissions, and I know it makes us a little bit tired because we know that South African commissions is not a good mix. We never know if anything positive comes out of these commissions. But I actually think these commissions are a really good thing, and I'll explain that as I go. But the first thing is, let's actually explain all the different commissions. The big one, the big bad boy. Right? The big one is the Zondo Commission into State Capture, basically looking at allegations of corruption and state capture by the Gupta family, but also looking at public sector corruption in general in the last decade. Now, that's a big one, right? But obviously we'll come back to that one. And then the other one that we also have going on is the Public Investment Corporation Commission, which is looking at a number of dodgy dealings that the Public Investment Corporation has made over the years, with specific focus on the CEO, who for instance gave tenders to his girlfriend. Now the Public Investment Corporation is Africa's biggest asset holder, with assets worth of 2 trillion rand. Now most of those are like government pension funds, so you can understand if the guy is giving tenders with like your mother's pension, that's a bit of a problem, right? The SARS Commission, right? So before I jump into the SARS Commission, this one is really heavy. And the meaning of this is, now I'm like 2024 this year, but even I know that like in the past in this country, in the first 10 to 20 years of our democracy, SARS was a very credible institution in this country, right? It collects taxes. In Africa, it's known, if you study political science, anything that has to do with institutions in this continent, you know that collecting SARS is something that African governments in general struggle with, right? South Africa, one of the great things we had with democracy was actually we had an institution that was very powerful, credible, that actually got its taxes and was able to fund our amazing social programs that we have in this country. However, and so any graduate that came out of varsity was happy to work at SARS, just as they were happy to work at any major bank in this country. However, in the last few years, even SARS has been tainted in corruption. This is mainly focused on Tom Manyani, and that's where the commission has been looking at. Now, Tom Manyani was, of course, appointed by Jacob Zuma, and we see here that the allegations are coming out about a culture of fear within SARS. We see interventions that, when you look at them, are really dodgy. For instance, we see that when he came in, there was a modernization program of their IT, right? And if you actually remember the video about the woman who couldn't even explain how SARS IT system works, you'll probably think, yeah, they really needed it. Well, he intervenes, he stops it, and then we see a few months later, he basically gives a 200 million contract to his buddy, and these are the allegations, right? But yeah, so we see things like that, and what inherently it's done, all of these allegations that have come out SARS, is that it's hurt the credibility of SARS. Do you really want to give your money to an institution that is going to play with your money, right? That is not actually going to use the money what it's meant for. That's the big thing with the SARS Commission. And so there are a whole bunch of other commissions. For example, the commissions into the NPA. Now, we know in this country, when it comes to justice, we're not the greatest country in the world. But to be fair to the police and to be fair to the judges who have to actually, judge on if the person is guilty or not, they're only as good as the prosecuting authority that they have. And we've known for a couple of years that our prosecuting authority has actually been captured. For instance, the commission focuses on Advocate Jiba, who was the former director of public prosecutions, and the fact that she had intervened, the allegation that she had intervened in certain corruption cases and had actually corrupted the cases themselves. So these allegations are about the case against Jackie Celebi and also the case against Richard Mzuli, who was a close Zuma ally at the time. The NPA, in order for us to actually start prosecuting all these corrupt politicians, to prosecute the rapists, the murderers we have in our country, the NPA has to work. So those are all the commissions. And of course, there are going to be more that are coming out. Right, for now, instance, there's been a report that has been released on the State Security Agency, an agency which is supposed to protect you and I against terrorist threats, against international threats. But a damning report has come out to say that, in fact, what this thing was used by was actually to target Jacob Zuma's political opponents within the African National Congress. And that really makes you lose a lot of hope, because these are institutions that are supposed to be working on behalf of me and you.
You had a vegetarian curry on that day.
Vegetarian curry I don't like, but I had to eat it. Curry. I ate it. But that curry never finished me. I stood firm.
So let's get into the analysis part of this episode, right? Okay, let's go. So the big thing, let's first start with state capture, right? So state capture is not a new phenomenon. It's not a South African phenomenon, as some people would like you to believe. In fact, the word state capture was come up, the World Bank actually came up with the term state capture to actually mean like when a government, when a private entity, be it like a family, be it individuals, be it company, has so much influence on a government, it actually changes the policy direction and the decisions that that government makes. So the issue of state capture is a bit of a passion of mine, because I actually worked in the parliamentary inquiry for Eskom in Parliament. So what I saw there was absolutely shocking stuff. It shocked all the parliamentarians that were there. I mean, there was really, on this issue, the evidence that had come out, there was no like, we're trying to defend our party, we're trying to defend our president. It was just really bad. Right? So you have instances, for instance, like at Eskom, where 600 million, this is not small stuff, 600 million, 800 million is like paid out to Gupta-owned companies for work that there's no proof it was done, right? But I'll give you like further examples. One of them, like you wouldn't even see this in like a television show, the amount of just action there is in this thing, right? Anyway, there was this thing called the Optimum coal mine that was providing coal to Eskom, right? And basically they were providing this coal, but they weren't making any money from this coal because it was becoming more expensive. So the contract allows them to actually say, look, it's time for us to renegotiate with you as Eskom, because we're not making a profit from this thing. Now, during this time, they say, okay, cool, it's fair, let's go. But during this time comes in our Brian Molefe, crybaby Brian Molefe, right? And he comes in, and then next thing, this contract is put on hold, right? And it gets so bad, he puts this thing on hold without really any good explanation, to such a point that this company actually starts going bankrupt and is put on business rescue. Next thing, an offer comes in. And guess who the offer comes in from? It comes in from a Gupta-owned company, right? Cool beans. So they sell everything, and now Brian Molefe is ready to negotiate with this company about coal. Now, the original amount that Optimum, right, was asking for, Brian Molefe pays the Guptas way more for this coal. Anyway, comes in, negotiations happen, and it's the day that this thing is supposed to be bought. Now the Guptas are 600 million rand short. It was selling for almost or more than 2 billion. They're 600 million rand short. They go to the banks in the middle of the day. All the banks come together. That's what happens when you have money. And they're like, we need 600 million. The banks are like, bomb. All right. For me, if I was the bank, it kind of makes sense. Why? Right? So 9 o'clock at night, the board of Eskom calls an extraordinary meeting, and they have one thing on the agenda, and that is a contract, right, which is actually not connected to this thing, but a contract which is supposed to be given to a Gupta-owned company for 600 million exactly, right? So this board meeting was not scheduled. It just came together at 9 o'clock at night. It was the only thing on the agenda. These guys get exactly the amount of money they need, and the next day they're able to buy their new coal mine, and tada, they're making money from Eskom at exorbitant rates. No one else is making this amount of money. Now, obviously, I think I don't have to explain to you what the problem is there. But, obviously, people are going to say to me, well, Kule, the state has always been captured. And let me tell you something, you are absolutely right. The state has always been captured. During apartheid, there was definitely a close relationship between mining companies, between Afrikaans-owned companies and the state. It's exactly. But you see, the problem with that is normally when people bring up that argument, they're trying to just squash the argument about corruption in South Africa in general, which to me is an absolute problem. But two, when like our grannies and our grandpas and and our mothers and our fathers fought for a state where your voice would count, right? They didn't want us comparing ourselves to an apartheid system or a colonial system. We are supposed to do better. But I think the second problem is here, right? Eskom's job in particular is developmental. What that means is that it's supposed to make cheap electricity so me and you can benefit in terms of we don't have to pay a lot of money for electricity, which we are doing now, and our industries also are globally competitive because they're not spending a lot on electricity. The problem with what happened at Eskom is that the corruption and rot was just so much that even the price of our electricity started to go through the roof. And at the end of the day, the corruption is starting to hurt me and you. And in fact, today, Eskom now is more than 400 billion rand in debt, a debt that me and you have to take care of, right? But the other argument that's also made here, which is a little bit tiring, is that, yeah, no, with the Guptas and state capture, we were really trying to help black entrepreneurs and all of this. And I agree with you. Eskom has a lot of procurement, right? Very powerful procurement that could be helped to bring in black entrepreneurs, black industrialists that we can build in this country and create more jobs, right? And maybe that the coal procurement thing is a little bit monopolized. I agree with that. But the problem here is also the second thing, that this state capture project was probably the most Rainbow Nation thing we've ever seen in South Africa, right? If you look at the Gupta, the big corruption charges, they were with McKinsey, so-called white-owned company, KPMG, so-called white-owned company, T-Systems International, so-called white-owned company, etc., etc. In fact, we even have instances where black-owned mining companies, better credentials, better technical skills are overlooked so that these Gupta guys can actually benefit. So you can actually see here, this wasn't about me, this wasn't about you, this wasn't about more black entrepreneurs, this was just about greed. And whoever had the most money, whether it was the Guptas or the guys at Bosasa, was able to infiltrate the state. At the end of the day, we're left with a mess, right? We need a functioning state in order to deal with the poverty crisis, in order to deal with unemployment crisis, in order to deal with all the debt that we have. We now spend a day 1.2 trillion rand just servicing our debts. That's a problem, right? That's money that could be helping all of us, but it's not. Our state is effectively broke. Right? So I just want you to all think about this. I've tried to kind of break down the story, make it as simple as you. And I think as we go on, more revelations are going to come out. Things are going to come out. But let me just say one thing. For me, in my opinion, at the moment, the fact that we're looking into this, we're understanding how this works within the democratic system, this is a good thing. Because for now, we can actually say never, never again. So, ladies and gentlemen, next week we're going to be handling Venezuela. Remember to subscribe to the channel. And yeah, this is the Political Corner.